Hello, so welcome to Unit 8, Week 8 of the app LOOC. I'm coming at you from my glorious home studio, recording studio here, and I'm going to be talking to you today about making RPGs. Should be pretty fun. I've managed to find a RPG kit that we're going to be using for XNA, and it gives us a lot of the functionality that we need. Um, the basic idea is to make a 2D RPG. Here's my favorite one of those, Phantasy Star. Just some basic. Here you are in an armory and you're buying stuff, and then you kind of walk around in this village. The XNA toolkit actually has a very similar kind of feel to it. That's why I'm showing this one. The only main difference is when you get to combat in Phantasy Star, you walk around in this overworld type setting, and when you get to combat, it gives you this kind of like first-person kind of view of the creature. In ours, it's you'll see it's kind of like side by side. There's like one enemy camp. You know, the enemy camp is over here, and you're over here, and you kind of fight each other in the middle, taking turns. It's a turn-based role-playing game. So that's basically what we're going to be doing. We're going to be making our own version of an RPG. Each of you should be making your own version of an RPG from this kit. I'm going to take the day today in the videos that we have to kind of explain what I've come to learn about the RPG toolkit. Again, this is a Microsoft provided toolkit that you can use, and I've gotten to know it fairly well, and I'm going to explain the questing system to you, as well as how you can start to customize it, as well as a little bit of the player dynamics, since one of the topics on the syllabus this week is talking about the player. So we're going to talk about the player a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go to the Unit 8, and under Unit 8 you'll see listed XNA RPG Toolkit. You should download that once you have that on your desktop. I've got mine on my desktop here. Once you've got that on your desktop, you can just simply go up to Extract Files and choose your projects directory. I've got a projects directory here for my all my Visual Studio 2010 projects right here, and I already extracted it, and I just made a new folder. I just hit new folder, I called it RPG, and I extracted the role-playing game files to that. And then once you do that, you will have a new folder called RPG. Inside of that, the role-playing game, and there's this SLN, and you can right-click on that and open with Microsoft Visual C# 2010 Express, just as you're used to. And once you do that, you will come up with this view. Now you might have to set your set this back between reach and high def. Mine was set to high def because that's what I'm playing on right now. But if you're on a lower end PC, you can actually set that over to reach, and it'll be set to high def by default, so you might get that error message if your card can't support high def mode for the API. So the rest of this, so basically here we've got, you'll see some things that you're used to seeing. You'll see that there's basically a role-playing game data windows. This is where the quests appear, for example, and you'll see a role-playing game windows, and basically the animations appear here, the data itself appears here, the quests, the map itself, and then the role-playing game windows represents all the gameplay logic. So we've got basically quite a bit of stuff here to go over, as you can tell, and then inside of that's sort of where all the data resides, and then there's a content role-playing game content windows folder that represents where all the textures are. For example, our hero walking, well, let me show you this first. Let me show you it running. I'm going to go ahead and go up to, and to get it running, you got to make sure, obviously, that you've got role-playing game window selected as your default project. If you don't, you can go to set as startup project and you just hit start debugging. And here we go with this. So we've got a bunch of different options that they've given us. This is again the Microsoft RPG game toolkit that we'll be using to make our own game. It would be much too involved for a 12-week course to do this all from scratch, so hence we're using this toolkit on top of XNA. I'm going to go ahead and say new game just to show you guys how this works. And you can see there's quest screens and sort of screens that show what the game is. And in this case, they say the evil Tamar has stolen the sacred amulet which binds the world of Mercadia together. Without it, Mercadia is doomed. Despair shall overwhelm the populace as volcanoes erupt, earthquakes devour villages, tornadoes engulf the landscape, and hurricanes destroy the harvest fields. Civilization will come to an end, and darkness will rise to consume the world. Mercadia needs a a savior, of course, and Mercadia needs you. So your objective is to go and seek out Shadar the Wise and talk to Shadar the Wise. So go and speak to him. And then you got one option here, which is go back. Now on your keyboards, just keep in mind, escape represents B, enter represents A. So if I hit escape, I go back here, and if I hit A, I can select into that to see the description again. So here I'm hitting escape. That brings me back to the main quest line. I'm hitting enter for A. You can also, by the way, oops, get my options screen up here again so you can see my face. I've also bought, I actually had to pick another one of these up. I used to have a ton of these. I don't know what happened to them back in my days running Frozen Codebase, but I had to get a brand new one because I think mine might have broken. I used to have a ton more of these, but I only have wireless 360 controllers in the house, and unfortunately I don't have a receiver for my wireless controllers, so I was unable to hook those up, so I just went ahead and picked up a wired. I prefer the wired controllers anyway when I'm creating Windows-based and Xbox 360 games because they're a lot easier for debugging. You just plug it in and go. You don't have to worry about making sure the drivers are installed for the wireless adapter, and if you want to switch this to different computers, it's really easy to do, and you kind of alleviate one possible point of error, and it just makes things a lot easier. So you might want to pick yourself up one of these. I bought this at Best Buy for like $39 or something like that. If you don't do that, you can also, there's a lot of different game pads. Like Logitech makes one, Thrustmaster makes one. There's all kinds of different companies that are making game pads that you probably can use. Assuming they support the 360, they probably support XNA. So you should be able to plug any of those in. Now, obviously you don't need to. You can just go ahead and hit escape for back and A for enter. One of the problems I've noticed on their default kit is that, for example, Y is stats. I think Y is the space key, I think, yeah. Space is Y. Tab is the menu, which is the little start button that's showing down here on the bottom right there. That's the menu, and you hit tab for that. So you just have to remember your settings, basically, if you're just using a keyboard and mouse. But anyway, here I am. I'm the bold hero. I think they called the guy Colot or something like that, and I can kind of walk around. You can see he's playing his sprite animations here as he walks. I can go back and forth, and Shadar the Wise is right down here. I talk to him. He gives me a quest. He says I need to meet my new comrades, earn necessary experience, gold spells, equipment required to challenge and defeat Tamar, who resides in his lair known as the Unspoken Tower. Good luck. And I can continue, and this gives me a quest complete because I have met Shadar, so the quest unlocks as complete. And that gives me a hide shield because I have completed that quest. Now, it gives me this new quest to find a glimmering rhubarb for Shadar the Wise, and then he gives me the hide shield in return. So I can say in progress. I can go back. If I go over to this little thing here, unfortunately, the spacebar does not work here. You need to use the controller for the take all if you want. Otherwise, you can hit enter and just take the glimmering ruby. I think enter works. Oh, I might have just crashed it. There, I got it. So yeah, enter works there, and now I've got the glimmering ruby. And you can see that the requirements met stage has been unlocked. I can go back. I can go back to Shadar the Wise. He says thanks for the ruby. And here's the hide shield. So I've got my hide shield. Now he says go get me another ruby and you can get a short sword. I go over here and I get the ruby, take it, go back, requirements met. I go back and give it to him, and here's your ruby, Mr. Shadar. Please give me my short sword, blah blah blah. I've got it. Continue. Yay, short sword. Continue again. So now it's telling me to go on and do combat. This test battle is where we're going to add a quest in a little bit. We're going to add the ability to basically have the character go get another ruby and return that in exchange for a helmet. But first, I'm just going to show you this battle really quick where you go and fight. So test battle is set up in progress, and I have to go and find someone to fight. So I'm going to go down here, keep taking some of this gold, healing potions, and here's the Sir Solid or whatever, Salad, or I don't know what the guy's name is. But anyway, I'm going to attack him. Sir Shire, there's his name. Okay, yay, I'm attacking him, and I did 6 points of damage. As you can see, Kalat's level is listed down there, level 2, his hit points 45 out of 45. I'm going to attack him again. Yay. He's going to attack me. Now, what Sir Shire has on him is if I would have tried to come and fight him before, it would have told me that I don't have the proper equipment to fight him yet. And since I did pick that up, and I think I might, this guy is really bad. He's not hitting me at all, but I think I might have forgotten to equip my stuff, but it really didn't matter because this guy is super underpowered and I'm kind of OP pretty much. And he's blocking right now, so that's great. Okay, here we go. And you'll notice I don't have any spells. You eventually get some characters with spells, which is kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and... Okay, I don't know if he's going to do that every time or what the deal is. And there he's gone. So I won. Now I've got a short sword plus and a minor healing potion, 2 minor healing potions. Yay. And I've met my requirements for a test battle. And I can go back to him. And you may be the one to save us from evil Tamar. Yay, congratulations. Quest is complete. And now I've got spell upgrades. No, I don't, because I'm a warrior. But they still list them anyway. That's alright. It is just a work in progress. That is the thing to remember for this game, and all the games we're making. They're all works in progress. So don't be too critical on them. Now, I want to equip stuff. I'm going to equip it there. I hit A, and then equip. I'm going to equip this. There, now I've equipped my stuff. So hopefully you're getting an idea of what this is all about. I really need to get a little widget or something for the webcam, but I have yet to do that, and maybe just have it docked down here, but whatever. Anyway, yeah, so that's the RPG starter kit, and now let's kind of start going through this. So we've got, you saw quite a bit of stuff just there, and I want to just kind of go through and talk about some of that stuff that you just saw. We've got the main game engine here, role-playing game windows, and all the various screens. Um, the tile engine is here. You can see an input manager here. This was the first one I wanted to show because one of the sections today was to talk about the player and getting input, and I wanted to make sure we talk about that. I'm opening up all these regions here, and by the way, the pound region basically defines that you can be able to collapse entire sections, and then you say end region, and that collapses that. As you can see, there's keyboard data and gamepad data. This is returning the gamepad state. We're going to initialize and reset our action maps. Then in the update, this should look very familiar to what you saw before. This is just previous keyboard state equals current keyboard state. So I guess my message to you guys was, well, yeah, this looks pretty complex, but they actually haven't done all too much on top of it. They've done quite a bit of data processing type stuff to make this work, but and they've added various actions you can take that are possible on clicking various things. For example, here's all the various gamepad buttons that you can click on. And they've added a bunch of stuff there. So the main role-playing game, this is kind of what we'd come to know as game. And this has the main section, and as you can see, our using section here. But this should look pretty familiar as well for the adding of screens, loading and unloading of content. Drawing is going to be doing all of our drawing. They've got an entire tile engine that they're using, and this player position represents the position of the player inside of the tile engine. So he's got a tile position for the player, tile offset, and an on-screen position, as well as a direction that the player is facing, the movement that the player is going, and here's the move function. So this is if we wanted to change the move function of the player, this is where we could do it. And here's where we actually calculate what the next movement should be based on what's coming out of the actual input controller, because this is the vector 2 that that comes in as the vector that the player is moving in, and then it calculates what direction that is going to be based on that vector, whether it's southeast, northeast, east, southwest, northwest, or west, or south or north. The reason for that is that we want to know which tile the player is moving into next, so that we can know what if we need to load up another set of tiles, for example, or not. And that's very important in a tile-based game. A tile-based game really will basically have, let me open up Paint quickly here. So you can see there's all these grid lines here. I was going to change my grid view, but anyway, this is good enough. You can see basically if each one of these was a tile, for example, we might end up having basically a tile that looks sort of like this. And if you can imagine, check out this base layer for map 2 XML. If you can kind of compare that to, like, so if the number 4 here in the first cell, if that was there and then there was a 4 surrounding it, imagine that as basically the tile setup for this particular map. And each one of these, this is kind of the base layer. There's also a object layer, a collision layer, and the player needs to know, and we're going to talk about these layers in a little bit, but the player needs to know which objects are in that layer and which tile he's on. So the player at any given time is on a certain tile. And for example, let's see what the player is currently on when he starts the game. The place where you control the spawning of the player is called spawn map position. Right now it's set to 9-7. So when you start the game, you can see him spawning in the 9-7 spot. So there he is. If I want to move him down a little bit, do 911 for example, it might be right on top of Shrednar or whatever the guy's name is. Yep, there he is right on top of him. So now we're on top of Shrednar. So that's about it. It's right there. So the next thing to talk about is how this tiling system is set up, how it's used. So the overall tiling system is just a two-dimensional map reader that basically takes specifications, supports rendering sprites at certain locations, supports drawing collisions at certain locations, and all of that. So when we're looking at map XML, we can see, for example, the base layer. The base layer is going to be used for the numerical index supporting the tile of the map's textures, so what's actually on the ground, and it specifies the sprite that's drawn in that space, which is usually going to be the ground. So that is that. For the fringe layer, you can take a look at fringe layer down here. That ties into the map's textures. That specifies the second sprite that's drawn there. These are usually like trees, buildings, fences, etc., stuff like that, and anything that isn't at ground level but needs to match the ground level. The object layer ties in to specifies the sprite numbers actually drawn on that location, and where those appear. So chests, characters, that kind of thing. And these always appear on top of all the other objects. Collision layer is basically either it can collide or it can't, and so we see 0 where it can't collide, and you can kind of see that on the first map where he starts out and there's like this river. That's kind of what all these ones are. That's the river in question. So looking at this this grid, you can kind of imagine what we were looking at before. If we kind of run this just very quickly, oops, you can see how it's got basically the water here and down there and then up there. So so yeah, that's basically the collision areas being defined there. Now, as I said, the player is going to be defined here in the spawn map position. And what actually happens is in player position.cs that we were looking at just a second ago, that position of the player is going to be used to center the camera. It also uses it for collision checks operations. So it uses it for a great many things, and it just tracks that one position in the world through use of the movement section here and the overall tile position, etc. That's in there. Spawn position becomes the first one, but then it can move, obviously. So the next thing to look at is actually in maps, map.cs. Oops, I'm in the wrong location here. There we are. That's actually in the data section. Maps.cs is map.cs right here. And this actually is the one that specifies the map type and all the data processing for that given map. And it comes in the form of this class instance. So all the XML files that you were seeing before will come in here, and there will be instances of a type per map. And that's where we get into the base layer, fringe layer, and all that stuff. So basically, we've got the data project, which is just a library that kind of defines what game types are going to be used and what's going to be loaded from the XNA content pipeline. That's what we're looking at here. We've got the content pipeline extension, which is just this content windows section. the maps, for example, all the various XML files for fixed combats, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then we got the game project itself. And that's basically the tile engine and how it supports the player as it moves through space. Now there's a function that I've been looking at for a while here, ever since I got this toolkit, which is a very useful function called update user movement, which I'm just going to do a quick find in files on, just because I want to show you this awesome tool. If you click this little folder next to this text box, it says find in files. If you know the name of a function, it becomes really useful. And so I know, for example, that's called update user movement, because I want to show you guys the how the player actually is updated. And I can just click on, in this case it found 2 instances of it, and I can just click on the one in question. Very, very useful. You can search partial strings, so for example, if I wanted to search for all of the occurrences of the word player, I could do that. It's going to give me a huge list, but I could then kind of narrow it down from there. You can tell this is 918 matching lines, so that's pretty crazy, but I'm sure that something like spawn position would be probably have much fewer lines. Actually, it doesn't even have any. How about spawn itself? Well, spawn has a few, more than a few. It has 33, but that's kind of narrowing it down. And now you can see, okay, because if you've forgotten where the player spawns from, we can see, okay, use the spawn position here. This is where it actually gets the spawn map position. So you can start to kind of piece together like a puzzle where all this stuff hooks in using this nice find in files tool. So I'm going to go back to update user movement. Right here, this is in the tileengine.cs, and I basically say if the action pressed that moves the character up, and can the party leader move up. And so this code base is already basically created so that you can have your AI, friendly AI, your NPCs, or not your NPCs, but your party members following you, and you can have some crude AI following you throughout the game. And we're going to do that next week, where they're going to actually be following you. But you can see it checks for can the party leader move up, and if so, then actually moves the desired movement changes. And then we've got a collision section where we check if we're not blocked, etc., and all that kind of thing. So that is where we update our desired movement. Now I knew, for example, that animating sprite was a type from before, so I'm going to search on animating sprite, see all the occurrences of that, because what I want to show you next, and you can see there's the animating sprite class that's here, and then character.cs, which is what I wanted to show you. So I found it correctly with find in files, and here we go. We're looking at the character.cs file, which is down inside of role-playing game data /characters. It even shows you kind of the path /characters, character.cs. And this is what's going to cause the sprite animations to be played on the map view for the character. So we've got the walking sprite here, resetting the animation here, and then inside of this does the add standard character walking animation. This plays the correct animation, add animation for walk south, for example. This is adding all the standard walking animations to the character. So what I actually wanted to find was the correct one for the walking direction that we've chosen. So I'm going to go ahead and do a walk south and see how this is actually done. So this plays a given animation name with the given direction suffix. For example, play animation will play the walk south animation with that given direction. So now if you track into that, you can see where that's actually called from, which is useful. And that's called from reset animation, which basically says, am I already walking? And if I am I playing the right direction? Otherwise, I reset it. And you can see that being called here with being reset to walk or reset to idle. And we can even see where reset animation was called from. Reset animation looks like it's being called from the main session update, which is the main draw non-combat function. So they've created this idea of a session, a role-playing session, and this actually has the drawing of the session environment to the screen. So sessions are basically there for you to, this way you can save out an entire session and save out all the various map settings. So it's kind of an extension on top of the idea of having just a traditional update loop. So we've got, for example, party.cs in a session, party save data, save game description. This way they've made it such that you can basically save this out relatively painlessly, which hopefully we'll cover next week a little bit. So that is it for my basic walkthrough of the engine. I'm going to come back to this when I start talking about how to customize it a little bit in video 3 of this week's content. The second video I'm going to cover is updating quests. So we're going to do some quest updates next and actually do something in the game. So the first thing we're going to do is actually add a quest to get a helmet and see how that updates. So all you've really learned for now is how to change the player's position. You know, if you really wanted to, maybe you could muck about with some of these XML files that I've showed you, but don't get too far ahead of yourself because we haven't really done too much yet to prepare you for that. I just kind of wanted to give you an overview of the code base, play the game a little bit, get you used to it, and we'll do more in the next section. All right, see you soon.